Hello, in Efir, the news from the television company Ostankiно. The Prime Minister of Russia, Viktor Chernomyrdin, stated today to Interfox that the country can no longer be turned back from the path of reform. The new appointments in government will in no way reflect on Russia's fulfillment of obligations to its foreign partners. Today, the first meeting took place of the members of the new cabinet. The first meeting of the government of Russia this year was conducted in its renewed membership in the repaired building on the Krasnoyarskaya riverbank. Behind closed doors, they examined the question of the organization of work of the cabinet of ministers and discussed the proposals made by Viktor Chernomyrdin, options for leading the country out of the crisis. The Prime Minister devoted special attention to the sudden liveliness in industry. He emphasized that we must seek ways and means to assist companies which are at a standstill, which could bring profit to the government. But he also noted that the ministries and departments in the restructuring of the budget must orientate themselves on revenue and cut expenditures to a maximum. The apparatus of the ministries and government have been decreased by 20%, but in the opinion of the Prime Minister, because of the high qualifications and the mobilization of abilities, performance of officials must even improve. The approaches may differ, but always and almost unanimously decision was adopted, and such a tradition, I think, in government will continue in the future, and it will be only to the benefit of the common good to deliver Russia from the current situation. The leader of the faction, Russia's Choice, the former first vice premier Yegor Gaidar, negatively assessed the departure from government of the Minister of Finances, Boris Fedorov. The replacement of the head of the Minister of Finances could objectively contribute to the essential weakening of financial policy. And this is extremely undesirable currently, stated Yegor Gaidar in an interview to Interfox. The high-placed delegation of International Currency Fund could possibly delay its visit to Moscow, since simply it will have no one to speak to there. This was informed today by the agency Reuters. The delegation should have arrived next week to discuss aid to Russian reforms, including the problem of extending a second special loan in the amount of $1.5 billion. Today in the Kremlin, the President of Russia, Boris Yeltsin, met with the President of Tatarstan, Mintyner Shaimiev. The basic theme of discussions was the development and legal foundations of relationships between the republics. According to the press service of the President, the discussions were around the need to expedite preparations and the signing of an accord on distribution of powers. In the near future, dialogues on this theme will resume. Today, Boris Yeltsin also met with the President of the Republic, Maria Vladislav Zotin, and the Chairman of the State Assembly of the Republic, Anatoly Smirnov. They spoke about establishing vertical channels of executive power, economic and social problems. Today, the State Duma of the Federal Assembly of Russia completed its first 10 days of its work. At this, the deputies decided to call a recess until the 1st of February. And so the organizing structuring of the State Duma of Russia today is almost complete. By adopting several resolutions, they defined legal, professional, and factional and other responsibilities of the deputies, and also the conditions of life and work in the capital. In the meeting with the constituents, the members of the lower chamber of the Federal Assembly are leaving Moscow with the hope that by their return, the new parliamentary building will be in full working condition. This hope was confirmed by the announcement of the Speaker, Ivan Rybkin, who stated that during yesterday's meeting with Boris Yeltsin, the corresponding instructions were given to the government of Russia. In the afternoon, the deputies of the lower chamber adopted the declaration on the critical situation on the territory of the former Yugoslavia. The State Duma called the government and the President of Russia to take all necessary measures in order to avoid escalation of military activities in the Balkans. And the last issue, which was decided today in the Duma, has relevance for television and also to other sources of mass media. How the work of the Duma is illuminated in mass media, many deputies are dissatisfied, and it was even proposed to renew the airing of the broadcast program Parliamentary Hour. The Parliamentary Hour program, which Hezbollah used both its equipment and the structure itself as an instrument of war with the president. We cannot return to this. And not only is there no sense, but it is also dangerous and one must not. Today, the President of Russia, Boris Yeltsin, signed a decree on the project of the resolution of the State Duma and to declare amnesty. In the decree, the President resolved to consider it indispensable to declare the act of amnesty to several categories of accused for crimes not presenting heightened social danger and to ratify the project of the State Duma to announce amnesty for the initial presentation of it by the President for examination by the State Duma. Today in Cheboksar, the triumphant ceremony took place of taking of office and swearing in of the first president of that republic, Nikolai Fyodorov. He is a prominent 35-year-old politician. The former Minister of Justice of Russia was elected by fellow inhabitants of the area in the end of December. Participating in the ceremony was the head of the administration of the President of Russia, Sergei Filatov. Today, the President of Kazakhstan, Nursultan Nazarbayev, who is on an official visit in Ukraine, visited Dnepropetrovsk. And yesterday, according to the agency Post Factum, the presidents of Ukraine and Kazakhstan signed 10 documents. They were agreements on friendship and cooperation and a declaration on the contemporary peace and emergencies and dangers. The Russian-Georgian documents to be signed during the Tbilisi visit of the President of Russia, Boris Yeltsin, basically were approved as a result of today's visit to Moscow of the Prime Minister of the Republic, Otar Potsatse. According to Interfax, during the meeting of Otar Potsatse with the Premier of Russia, Viktor Chernomyrdin, they examined 19 Russia-Georgian documents, including the agreement on friendship and cooperation. With an official visit in France, the head of the Georgian Republic, Edvard Shevardnadze, is long and well known in official and political circles. He last visited Paris in November of 1991 when, in the capacity of the head of the Soviet diplomatic corps, signed the Paris Charter on Security and Cooperation in Europe, which laid an end to the Cold War. And again, for Georgia, he put his signature under this document. The current visit to Paris pursues other important aims: to lay the foundations of the Franco-Georgian relations, which should be contributed to by the Accord on Friendship Cooperation signed by the two leaders. In the Elysee Palace, the attitude was one of understanding to his striving to deliver his country from serious problems. Georgia, as admitted by Edvard Shevardnadze, which was not pleasant to state, received recently the status of a developing country, which will permit her to count on corresponding international aid. The question of economic cooperation was discussed at the meeting of the Georgian leader with representatives of local business circles. The long-term contacts between Francois Mitterrand and Edvard Shevardnadze allows them, we must assume, to spread their trusting nature of their mutual relations to intergovernmental levels. Today, from Tbilisi to Grozny, a group flew out, which includes supporters and relatives of Zviad Gumsakhurdie, and also several members of the law enforcing organs of the Georgian Republic. They intend to meet with the members of the family of Gumsakhurdie in order to discuss questions related to the identification of the body of the ex-president and his reburial in Grozny. Several tens of thousands of residents of the Galsk region found the temporary refuge in some regions of western Georgia. However, a portion remained on their native lands. During the last 1.5 months, near the mouth of the river Inguria, 60 people camped. After the bridge over river Inguria was blown up, the only automobile road was destroyed, which would enable refugees to return home. The Deputy of the Prosecutor General of Georgia, Adzor Baushvili, and the First Deputy Ministry of Security, Avtandi Vasilyani, held a press conference at which videotapes were shown, clearly demonstrating that the Abkhazian and North Caucasian armed forces continue to burn homes, pillage and terrorize the peaceful population of the Galsk region. The Georgian authorities are for the return of refugees to their native lands, but only after which firm international guarantees are given of the safe return and residence of refugees on the land of their ancestors. The planned 22nd of January meeting in Baku of heads of the Turkish-speaking nations, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzia, Turkmenia, Uzbekistan, Azerbaijan and Turkey, have been postponed, as says Interfax. This decision was adopted with the need for a more detailed preparation for the meeting, at which they will presume to discuss issues of mutual relations between the countries in the economy, culture, education and science. With a noticeable majority of votes of the Chamber of Advisors of the Japanese Parliament, overturned was the package proposed by the government of legislative projects on large-scale political reform. It was directed at liberating the political life of the country from corruption and the democratization of the voting system. As a result, the coalition government headed by Morihiro Hasakawa, who tied his political fate with conducting of changes, found itself on the verge of a serious crisis. News number one in the Republic is, as formerly, the reorganization of the state control of national security. According to the presidential decree, all of the operational services are disbanded of this department. All employees have been temporarily suspended. Personnel changes were carried out in leadership circles as well. Responsibilities of the heads are laid now on David Shahnazaran. He was the former special ambassador to the president of Armenia. The reorganization of the Service of National Security is also forced by the situation which developed around Armenia, unceasing terrorist acts on the gas lines leading to Georgia, and tension on the Armeno-Azerbaijani border, and as well the usual escalation of military activities along the entire front of Karabakh resistance. All of this cannot but threaten national security of Armenia, especially since Azerbaijan, having crossed out peacekeeping efforts of many countries, including first Russia, for 1 month has actively but unsuccessfully conducting an onslaught on the positions of the force of self-defense of the NKR along the entire line of resistance. Today in Baku, the special session continued its work of the National Assembly of Azerbaijan. Discussions continued on legal and political assessments of the tragic events of the 20th of January 1990. Participating in them was the president of the Azerbaijani Republic, Idar Ali. The deputies noted that the events of 4 years ago cannot be analyzed without an analysis of the situation which developed in Azerbaijan in 1988, when the separatist movement there began in Nagorno-Karabakh, which led to the aggression of Armenian aggression against Azerbaijan. At the meeting, responsible officials were heard from the Central Committee of the Communist Party of Azerbaijan, who confirmed the fault of the authorities at that time for the events and exposed many facts and revealed important documents which exposed a conspiracy of the party nomenclature against its own people. The head of the Azerbaijani state stated that to him the actions of the leaders of the former USSR don't have to be proven. Everything is clear, but the main thing is to cast light on the darkest corners of the black tragedy so that the people and the future generations knew the truth about the drama. During the moment of a videotape presentation of material, Parliament continues its work. The parliamentary opposition of the Belarusian National Front will be against the dismissal of the Speaker Stanislav Shushkevich if this question is raised in the Supreme Soviet. This was stated today in Minsk by the leader of the opposition, Zenon Pozniak. About today's events in the Belarusian Parliament, the report of our correspondent. For 3 days, the Belarusian parliament has been working behind closed doors. The hot debates of the deputies are not for the ears of journalists and were dedicated to one theme only, the circumstances of the arrest in Minsk of the Comparty leaders of Lithuania, Barakevičius and Ermolavičius, who had been accused of participation in the known Lithuanian events of January 1991. As it became evident, for this arrest, no written sanctions were granted by the Prosecutor General of Belarus, Sholodonov, which violates legislation of the sovereign Belarus, and therefore demands, in the opinion of the deputies, punishment of those guilty, in this case the ministries of armed forces. At the closed session, left unclarified was the appearance yesterday, not far from the government building, of special units of internal forces. Opposition of Belarusian parliament at their press conference said today that they assess the developed situation in the Supreme Soviet as an exploitation of an opportunity to do away with those who are undesirables for the parliamentary majority. Including them are the Minister of Internal Affairs Yegorov and the chairman of the KGB Zhurkovsky. In the list of the vote of confidence included was the Speaker of the Supreme Soviet, Shushkevich, which is explained by the opposition as an attempt to overthrow power. The result of the closed session today was the voting to adopt the necessary resolution. However, the first point of it on the admission of the facts of the violation was not adopted. It was 1 vote short. In Crimea, the list of political activists who have become victims of terrorists is growing. It became known that in hospital, the Supreme Soviet deputy of this peninsula, Nemetov, died, on whom a few days ago an assassination attempt was made. As expected, the chairman of the government of Russia, Viktor Chernomyrdin, on the 24th or 25th of January, will complete a work visit to Oryol. The main aim of the visit will be to participate in the work session of the leaders of the region of Central Russia on measures to more fully employ the potential of the agrarian industrial sector in areas of Central Russia to improve food supply capability to the country. On the conveyors there are cookies. If one puts the letter together, it spells Kuban, the dream, the tender morsel, the rainbow, and about a dozen more names of such production are produced at this confectionery factory, which is a member of the famous in the country agrarian industrial plant Kuban. It was created by the decision of the Politburo. The Kuban plant was to prove that in the conditions of socialism, an enterprise could encompass productivity, refinery, and realization on the condition of self-financing and self-sufficiency. The agrarian industrial plant Kuban exists no longer. Remaining are only the immaculate in cleanliness import electronic technology, the building, the same productivity, and the same unusual for our methods standard of high quality. And now all of these companies of production are have become auctioneer societies and now independently lead the struggle for survival in market conditions, a breakthrough which they once were first to begin in the country. And these conditions are difficult to call conducive. The country literally flooded with sneakers and other grassroots level demands in bright packages. It is difficult to receive for such outstanding goods a decent price. And even though on the shelves as previously, it's difficult to find them. And one more problem. The import equipment is wearing out, but to replace it, one needs currency. Therefore, for the former plant Kuban must begin a new experiment, how to survive now in market conditions. According to the tempos of privatization, the Chelyabinsk district leads not only in the Rausk region, but in Russia in general. By the end of 1992, here, fully, it completed the so-called small privatization. The form of ownership was replaced by life-providing services, trade, and social nutrition. And in 1993, the past year, was the year of auctioning of the large industrial companies, and including such major industrial giants like Magnitogorsk and the Chelyabinsk metallurgical plants, the Ural automobile plant, and the Chelyabinsk pipeline company. Almost millions of employees of these companies have become shareholders, and 2.5 million Chelyabinsk residents have acquired shares of the plant and investment funds. And one may say already that although privatization in the south of the Ural has been completed, however, there is still a long way to go. A true boom is being experienced in Romania by the small and average entrepreneurs. Tens of thousands of people last year decided to open their own businesses, some in the hope of becoming rich and others only to survive in current difficult times. On each corner, advertisements appeared of private doctors, lawyers, accounting and transportation services were being advertised. Because of the lack of funds to rent space, people were remodeling their apartments and garages into drugstores, stores and repair shops. Among the businessmen, of course, there are leaders. For example, this cafe, Panipas, which is known throughout Bucharest. To work here, one may consider to be prestigious, but one can't be choosy these days. Today, every 10th person is unemployed, and at these small and average businesses, 1.5 million people are employed, while in the entire state industry, 2.5 million people are employed. In the country, for the first time in many years, competitive spheres of services began to appear. Today, private business yields 64% of the government profit. But success could be even greater, says the president of the National Association of Businessmen, Marcela Durbenga, if we hadn't made so many mistakes, the worst of which was to provide discount conditions for foreign businessmen who privatized our best companies. For the accomplishments during the last year, Marcela Durbenga, together with other colleagues, was honored with this diploma. Bestowing the award on her, the president, Ionescu, emphasized that the leaders of the country are relying on the small and average entrepreneur. Today, in its hands, capital is accumulated necessary for the rebirth of the entire economy. Our correspondents have investigated the situation which developed around one of the largest auctioneer society, Germes, and what became evident, our next report. We visited number 2 Kalinchovskaya Street. According to the requests of our television viewers, and what did we see? Lineups, bonfires to keep you warm. Now our shareholders have heard that approximately in March, the regular share meeting will take place, which will announce the next issue and the number of dividends. And anyone who buys shares 30 days prior to the auctioneering meeting will receive dividends in full volume, as the same as the person who purchased, let's say, 1/2 of a year ago. The number of shareholders in Germes is so great, and those who wish to acquire shares is so great as well, that the areas which we occupy. Excuse me, the question is, I've heard that you have insufficient area to locate. Absolutely true. We need area, area, and area. Germes, as of today, is the only company which realistically pays enormous dividends to its shareholders. Therefore, it is natural the number of those people wishing to acquire shares has increased sharply. Germes has long ceased to be only a private company. It is time for the government to consider its problems, the first of which is to supply Germes with buildings. Chained to the Kremlin is the attention of the entire world, and this is understandable. The change of government, financial instability, aid to Russia, and many other things. And yet today, here, there was a celebration. Today, the president of Russia honored the beautiful people, those who are beautiful in soul and heart and aspirations. And these were the people, despite all our difficulties, have managed to make our lives a little more beautiful. Builders, scientists, pilots, actors, artists, writers, the cream of education assembled here. Vasily Tsiblev for vows valor and heroism was honored with the Golden Star, the hero of the Russian Federation. And Alexander Serebrov, it was not his first flight into space, and he performed it with dignity. He was honored with the Order, Friendship of the People. Pilot researchers Vladimir Solonkayev and Andrei Tavalakin for testing the plane TY-155 were also honored by the Stars of Heroism. In this work, on the same level are science and class flight ability. There were many people here whom you know from the television screens and from stage, with awards of national artists are Olga Ostromova, Sergei Solovyov, Tatiana Sterlin, the national artists Boris Miserer, Alexei Shmal. And high honors went also to activists in the arts, sciences, and the jurists of Russia. Honors for personal valor, friendship of the people were awarded to a large group of Russian intelligentsia. We congratulate them with this accomplishment. Today in the Kremlin, a meeting was held of the President of Russia, Boris Yeltsin, with the Chairman of the Presidium of the Russian Fund of Culture, the film director Nikita Mikhalkov. At the meeting, they discussed questions connected with the future of the fund as a social center and the rebirth and support for national culture. Boris Yeltsin was understanding toward the problems facing the fund and promised overall cooperation to immediately resolve their problems. Today, the telephone conversation took place of the President, Boris Yeltsin, with the Federal Chancellor of the Federal Republic of Germany, Helmut Kohl. As the press service of the President reports, the heads of the two countries exchanged views on several actual problems of two-sided relations and world politics. They discussed several aspects of the May official visit of the President of Russia to the Federal Republic of Germany, which is planned, and triumphant events planned with the completion of the withdrawal of Russian troops from Germany. With a noticeable majority of votes, the Chamber of Advisors of the Japanese Parliament overturned today the package proposed by the government of legislative projects on a large-scale political reform. It was directed at the liberation of the political life from corruption and the democratization of the electoral system. As a result, the coalition government, which is headed by Morihiro Hosokawa, who tied his political fate with the conducting of changes, found itself on the verge of a serious crisis. However, as Hosokawa himself stated, he, for now, does not intend to resign nor suspend Parliament. At the same time, a majority of observers feel that one of these two steps he will not be able to avoid. Gerry Adams, the leader of the Irish party Sinn Féin, the political wing of the extremist Irish Republican Army, proposed to specify the time limits of withdrawal of English troops from Ulster, that is, to return to a re-examination of the joint Anglo-Irish Declaration on Peaceful Regularization in Ulster, which was signed on the 15th of December in London. The Prime Minister of Great Britain, John Major, deferred this proposal. The Supreme Court of South Africa instructed to close one of the three radio stations, the Afrikaner National Front, which unites a series of ultra-right white groups of the country. The government has presented the highest judicial order, a search warrant on the radio Pretoria, which is accused in propagating political views of white extremists, although the radio station had only a license to broadcast recreational programs. Among the 10 private television companies, there is a competition underway in Poland for the first Polish commercial channel. The competitors speak of financial and artistic possibilities and their vision of the program's politics. Conditions of the competition are not defined. The final decision will be made by recognized professionals from the State Council on Radio and Television, in whose membership the Sejm has sent 4, the President has sent 3, and the Senate 2. One must say that the authority of television in Poland is extremely high. In the constant last years of political battles, it was able to preserve independence and objectivity, and general polls show that the trust of society to television is probably higher than that to the church. And that's probably why the reaction here is so positive to the appearance of a first commercial Polish program, which was initially favorites became identified, but it became clear that not one of them could serve the national channel on his own. Therefore, most chances to receive concessions will be by the companies which are able to join forces. The events of the last years have led to a paradoxical situation when the one-time prosperous companies of the Ministry of Communication found themselves on the verge of bankruptcy because of mutual non-payment and consecutive activities of the Ministry of Finances. This was discussion held today at the Council of Directors of Communication Companies today. As it became became apparent, absence of financing and debts make it very real the possibility of disconnecting transmitters which broadcast television and radio programs. The inability to purchase spare parts brings the equipment into an impossible condition. However, all proposals of the Central Commission, Ministry of Communications, television, radio companies, labor unions, companies on the need to develop concrete measures to help us out of the crisis. And several times we asked the Ministry of Finances and the Ministry of the Economy since February of 1993, yet we have not found positive resolution. In this situation, the Union of Workers of Communications state that soon there will be possibly a collective action as a result of which the broadcasting of television and radio programs will result. The representative of Kamchatka stated that in the region since the beginning of this week, television and radio transmitters have been silent. Local energy workers, not having expected their payment from hydroelectricity power, have simply disconnected. In Russia, traditionally, any life has been reduced to birth and death. The day of death of a leader was long celebrated as a main Lenin's date. But this is much later, and such the date became April, his birthday, not the January day of death, coincidentally by the riddle of history, by old style, with the day of the execution of Pugachev on the Red Square. On any scale, Lenin is recognized as a figure of world significance. For some, he is remembered as one of the most outstanding people of all times and peoples. For others, he is the embodiment of world evil. The battle to which he devoted his life did not proceed from principles of common human morality. But it no longer belongs to us, but to history, the cemetery of the world, and therefore, stepping upon it, one must be reserved. And everything which is moral serves the revolution. This was Lenin's thesis, which was no secret and was strongly propagated because it justified any deprivation and cruelty. The path to the unknown dim point in the distance could not have become a tragedy, not just for people, but for those who tried to affirm what this path was directing the star. When the mirage disappeared, the star apparently became the broken illusion of life, and therefore, in scientific and political circles, a reassessment of the individual took place, first of all, in the mass consciousness, in the minds of people. Epochs are not destroyed together with their idols and symbolism, and today, in no need for new cults, we have gone toward another extreme. All politicians are equal. One will go away, another will replace him, and only then we will be able to understand ourselves and most clearly imagine our future, when ideological understanding of Lenin and Leninism will be replaced by historical understanding. As a festival, the publishing house Panorama presented the appearance of several of its new books, in any case connected with the history of the country, and if one of the textbooks is the symbol of Russia, is received as a reference literary source on the past. In examining the second, Russian placards, it is both educational and frightening. Placards do not decorate us. This is factual. A mirror turned to the masses reflects our common hopes and meanderings. The first years of the Soviet power. Then, not covering up, some thought one way, but others thought on the contrary. And these are the two sides of the coin. After 1925, the forced unanimity of thought in mass press was victorious, and here they are, the artistic evidence of that. As if from the headlines of newspapers, the placards show how the most difficult century for Russia developed, the forgotten remnants of the past. But here there was everything. There was something to fear, and there was something to be proud of. And these truths, grief and joy, were endured as a great nation together. The textbook ends last year. Do you notice that the typographical placards have essentially disappeared from the streets and institutions? The crisis of a genre, perhaps. Although at meetings a mass of homemade bright leaflets, and yet several placards which entered the textbooks as previously touched the most sensitive parts of our social life. The book turned out to be extremely beneficial. Before the end of our broadcast and say goodbye, I would like to apologize for the interruptions and overlaps during our broadcast. We rely on your understanding and condescension, since for our entire team it was inexpressibly difficult to complete this broadcast. Literally 30 minutes before the beginning of this broadcast in Efir, at his workstation mounting materials for this broadcast, suddenly the assistant director of the team of the brigade of Efir, Viktor Kachanov, died. The most tragic is that he was only 23 years old. We express our sympathy, our deepest sympathy, to the relatives and friends of Victor. Good evening. In the European Championship in figure skating in Denmark, after the technical program was completed, leading is the French woman Asuria Bonali. The second position is with Oksana Bayan from Ukraine, and the third, the Russian Olga Markova. In men in the singles, the Ukrainian Odessa resident was first, Viktor Petrenko. Another Ukrainian received the silver, Vyacheslav Zagrabuk, and the bronze went to Alexei Romanov from Russia. At these very moments, the dance duos are competing. After the original dances, the first and second places are shared by the English Jane Turn and Christopher Dean, and the Muscovites Maya Usova and Alexander Zhulin. The Olympic fire continues to voyage across Europe. It became lit in the old Olympiad. It is traveling currently throughout Germany for the first time in the last 22 years after the Munich Olympiad. On the 5th of February in Oslo, the two flames will become one, the Greek and Norwegian, in order to glow again, and 1 week later in Lillehammer. At the World Cup in freestyle, Oksana Kushenko is number 2 after the ballet program. In the first place is the French woman Katifa Shrus. Today the trainers decided on the Russian Olympic team on freestyle. Alexander Mikhalkov, Natalia Orekhova will be in the acrobatic jumps. In the mogul, the two-time Olympic winner Sergei Shaplitsov and the silver prize winner of Albertville, Elizabeth Kozelnikov, and also Lyudmila Dinchenko, Yelena Kovalova, and Marina Cherkasova. The Finn Jan Simen set the world record in his country in the short water at a distance of 200 meters in the complex swim. His result was 1 minute 54.65 seconds. He exceeded his own world record by 0.94 seconds. Today at the International Hockey League Championships, there were 4 matches. Torpedo from Nizhny Novgorod, Crystal 7-2, Khimik Lada 3-2, the Army team and Kazansky Til 3-0, and Stroitel from Karaganda lost to Sokol 1-5. And the news of the alpine ski. In sport, yesterday in the World Cup in Switzerland, Anis Kargal was the best in the speed decline. Marcus's result was worse by 0.30 of a second. The famous Marc Girardel was number 7. The start is tomorrow on Saturday. Ole Lichtmeier was the best in the slalom in Marlborough. At the second level of the World Cup in Austria, in the solo sledding, the Husky team from Germany was first, and the women in the first and third were also German athletes, Baudet and Kochlik. Ahead is the team of Italy. The German team is in second place. Good evening. Warm Atlantic air from the northern European areas and the Baltic coast are moving toward Russia. Therefore, in Komi and Priduralia, the cold, cloudy weather will become more moderate. Here it will be slightly cloudy, with snow. In some places, storms, winds will increase, -7, -11. Warm, humid air will bring poor weather to the northwestern regions as well. On the Kolsk Peninsula, Karelia, Leningrad's district, Arkhangelsk and Volогодsk districts, it will be cloudy with snow and gusts in some places. In the Kolsk Peninsula, winds will reach 25 meters per second. The temperature at night -5, -10. During the day from -3 to +2. In the Baltic countries, they're expecting damp weather with some precipitation. The temperature at night around 0, during the day +2, +5. The atmospheric fronts will bring poor weather to central and central Chernozem regions of Russia. Here it will be cloudy with snow. Winds will reach 15 to 20 meters per second. The roads are icy. The temperature at night -5, -8. During the day 0, +3. The Volgovyatsk region will be warmer. The temperature -5, -8. In Belarusia, it will still be cloudy with precipitation. During the day, it will be 0, +3. The temperature on the territory of Ukraine and Moldova. From Central Europe, an anticyclone will enter. The weather will improve. Here it will be intermittently cloudy with without precipitation. In the morning, fog in certain areas. The temperature 1 to +5. A high-pressure area from the central areas of Russia is moving toward the southeast. Therefore, in the lower Volga, Stavropol, Krasnodarsk area, the weather will improve. Precipitation will end and the sun will shine. In the lower area of the Volga, at night -8, -12, during the day -6, -9. In Stavropol and the Krasnodarsk region, at night 0, during the day 0 +5. On the Black Sea coast and Krasnodarsk region, the air will reach 8 degrees, that is +8. In the mountains of the Northern Caucasus, because of snow, the danger of avalanche will remain. Beyond the Caucasus, it will be slightly cloudy, no precipitation, the temperature +4, +8. And now about the temperature in Petersburg and Moscow. In Petersburg tomorrow will be cloudy, at times wet snow, the winds from the southwest with gusts from 6 to 9 meters per second. The roads are icy, the temperature at night around 0. During the day, 1 +3. In Moscow will be in a zone of warm front. Here it will be cloudy with some snow, the winds from the southwest 5 to 9 meters per second. The roads are icy. The temperatures at night -2, -5, during the day 0. That is the prognosis for tomorrow. All the best. Goodbye.